I'm just going to agree with everything.
Racing games and sim racing.
Kudos for use of the word bombastic.
Hello and welcome back to the Traxion Control Podcast, your weekly dose of racing game and sim racing news and discussion. I'm Tom, joined as ever by Tom, but not joined by John this week because Tom...
He got married in the Arctic Circle this weekend.
Well, it wasn't quite that north, but it was at the tippity top of Scotland, so congratulations to John and Issa there. It was a great time, wasn't it?
It was really good. Living in Newcastle, I didn't know that it was physically possible to drive north for a further 7 hours, but apparently it was. But it was great. It was great to celebrate with John and Issa, who were off on their kind of like a little honeymoon, mini-moon thing this week, and then obviously he'll be back next week. But yeah, it was nice. We met some of John's family who seemed to know us from the podcast, which was nice. There was a room full of Traxion Control podcast fans at the wedding.
Yeah, we actually found the fans. Fantastic. They're all in the Hebrides or the Highlands, wherever it was. So apologies, now I've offended everybody in Scotland. Okay, moving on. We're going to dive into this week quite a few topics. The future of Assetto Corsa Rally, MXGP 26 finally coming out with some news on that. We've actually tried Wreckreation 2, which we didn't even know existed until we tried it, which is quite cool. We've got some rapid fire news, community questions, and some community feedback on last week's episode. So, first topic then, Assetto Corsa Rally. There was a Discord Q&A with the game lead, Irvin Zonka, and there was lots of nerdy stuff, lots of small stuff, and some cool sort of theories and predictions for the future. They stated that they'd watched Niels Huysingveld videos recently and enjoyed the feedback because it was constructive, and they are actually already working on tyre model changes and throttle map changes to do with that. Isn't it refreshing, Tom, to sort of see some someone picking up on some community feedback there and naming it and embracing it?
Yeah, well, anyone who knows Niels Huysingveld, his reputation, knows that the man loves a throttle map. I've seen a few videos of his where he goes into that level of detail. But why not? You know, it's a sim title, right? You know, they're not pretending to be anything other than a sim title. And so I think it's quite refreshing to see them not only going to this level of refinement, but being very open about it. Because, you know, a lot of the comments that you read online about games as they're being developed is, you know, why aren't you working on this or why aren't you working on that? And if it's a sim title, it'll be like, well, why aren't you trying to fix the tire model or why aren't you trying to fix marbles on the track or whatever it is? And actually, a lot of the time they probably are. They're just not telling you. So, yeah, it's nice that they're doing it in quite a public and casual sense. And I like the direction of the refinements. You know, there's been some new content for AC Rally recently, and this feels like, okay, well, let's see how we can refine the implementation of that content. I was particularly interested to see comment on gamepad control improvements. It's not something that we talk about very much on this podcast. I think the assumption is that most people listening to the podcast are racing on a wheel and pedals, but actually, that might be wrong, or there might be a lot of people that do have a wheel and pedals but like to race on gamepad as well. So, yeah, I was really pleased to see that they are spending some time on throttle implementation because it's a totally different art, isn't it? You know, the way that it's yes, there's a joystick, so it's not a totally binary left or right, but the way that the wheel, the rate of turn of your wheel matches your, you know, the 1 centimeter that your thumb moves left and right is an interesting science, you know, science that I don't know a huge amount about, but it's interesting that they're taking it that seriously. So yeah, overall, very, very positive.
Yeah, I think interesting as well. Let's not misconstrue the gamepad comments. Let us know in the YouTube and Spotify comments are you always on a wheel or are you using gamepad? He did say that those gamepad or controller improvements will come later in the life and through a form of sort of assists and masking to not nullify the actual physics, which is the right way of doing it. But they're thinking about it. And they are thinking about it, which is really positive. And he did sort of confirm that when version 1.0 of this game releases, that'll be, well, I'm not sure if he confirmed it, but he did say, when version 1.0 comes out, it'll also be on consoles, right? So does that confirm the timing a little bit if you work out the updates from now? Anyway, we'll let that nest. Have a think about that. The other two things, obviously, more cars, bit of speculation going on there. All-wheel drive 2 German, 1 French. So on our website, we've got an article, and I just put some images I took at an event recently of classic rally cars, because, of course. And they're my guesses. Certainly an Audi would be my guess, but who knows? And then also that clubs, in some form, are part of their roadmap, which is where in Dirt Rally and EAWRC and the past Nakon WRC game, you can have an asynchronous sort of event or competition. Traxion has competed in the Jersey E-Rally before a few times, where you had like a week to finish the rally. And it seems to fit this sort of sport the best, I think, sometimes, does asynchronous.
Yes.
Sorry, I was tuning you up there. I didn't know where I was going. Bit of a ramble.
I mean, it's rally, of course.
Yeah. We had a little bit of feedback on the website. Jez said, in news of the new cars coming in the next update, needs more stages, not cars. I mean, it needs both, I think.
Well, yes. Again, yes, it needs more stages, more cars, more modes, and more refinement of the implementation of all of the above, right? I mean, it's. I guess you can have a preference. Needs more stages, not more cars. Yeah, I get that. I would try and play devil's advocate, but last week there was a comment under the podcast that kicked off at me because before the episode started, we were like, "Oh well, there's a couple of points here. I'll argue this, you argue this," and somebody pointed out that I contradicted myself from a previous week. So I'm not going to play devil's advocate anymore. I'm just going to stick to my true opinion and just say yes. So the podcast is going to be very boring for me from now on. I'm just going to agree with everything.
No, that's not how it works. It doesn't matter. It's all good. We appreciate the feedback. We'll take it on board, but also keep doing our own inimitable thing. So I kind of agree with Jez. Stages, for me, come above cars, but you need both. Okay, we'll move on rapid fire this week to the next one. A game that, not many people know about, or dare I say, care about that much. But it's MXGP 26, of course.
Well, interesting. So in the Traction Control email newsletter that we sent out last week, I did a bit of a comparison table of the number of YouTube followers per racing series that has a officially licensed game. MXGP would be incredibly low down this list. So yeah, I don't entirely know if MXGP is necessarily big enough for a game. That was kind of the debate that we were having last week.
Yeah.
About IndyCar. But it's been, how long has the MXGP games been around? I'm sure I can remember playing, I don't know if it was officially licensed, but an MXGP style game back on the original PlayStation.
Well, yeah, there were definitely Supercross games back on the original PlayStation, which is, I don't want to offend anybody here, but it's very, very similar, if not the same bikes, but more of an American stadium sport. And motocross is more outdoors on the same bikes. And so this is the official game of the FIM World Motocross Championship, which is held around the globe, but not in American stadiums, which seems to be the more popular sport. So, I could be wrong there. Let us know in the comments. But the Monster Energy Supercross series has an official game that's currently biannual by Milestone. Milestone also used to do the MXGP games, and it made at least 6 or 7 of them on the bounce. The final one it did was 2021. So there was some appetite there, but also in a way where they're doing these sort of economies of scale where they're effectively releasing 2 very similar games every year, but with the different tracks and different sort of menus. So that's where it made sense. You're right, it's a niche sport. But anyway, this is a new one. They're going again. Slightly different development team. Some of the people who made 24, which was a bit poorly received. Published by Nakon, now using Unreal Engine for the first time for this dev studio in a racing game. And it's been released in October. We've also been hands-on, so if you want the full opinion, it's on the website. I felt like it was a huge improvement to 24, but that would be like saying that having a cold is a big improvement on having a disease. It's still not as fluid, I didn't think, as the Milestone MXGP games, which weren't exactly revered. But I've only played a very small slice. The championship mode and the free roam and all this. On the online, I need to try it at a later date.
Well, yeah, I've just tried. I just quickly double checked and fact checked my numbers there, and yes, it's interesting. So it's an interesting comparison here that IMSA's YouTube channel. I know YouTube subscriber numbers are not necessarily the be all and end all, and not necessarily the litmus test for how popular a racing series is.
No, but some sort of hint.
Yeah, I think so, especially for a younger audience. I think who are more tempted to follow a sport via the highlights on YouTube. And of course, there are differences because some will show the full races on YouTube, and therefore will get a disproportionately larger. But anyway, IMSA is at 1.9 million followers on YouTube. And I think, we see it in our comments all the time, people asking for, an IMSA game or more IMSA licensed cars and tracks and competitions, modes, etc. MXGP's got 919,000, so about half of that, but does have a game.
It's solid.
Perhaps, yes, yeah, decent, right? So maybe it's a testament to MXGP for realizing that actually, creating a game spun off from your race series is not just about selling units; it's about creating new fans.
Absolutely. And I also do think sometimes it's very easy for, let's say, car biased media or video game media that focuses predominantly on four wheels to overlook the popularity of some of the motorcycle series in the real world, in particular outside of the UK. So MXGP, it is a popular series. We don't know the exact sale numbers of the previous games. I can't imagine they're amazing, but it's justifying a long-term contract with Nakon. And this game, like I say, is an improvement. There's still work to do. So they've got a couple of months. And maybe my sense was this is where the game should have been 2 years ago. So for next year, the year after, they can add in things like, for example, there isn't a career mode. And I would expect that for a game of this sort. So hopefully they can do that next year. All right. Wreckreation 2 is our next topic. Not a sim or sim-like game. It's a bombastic follow-up. And just to be clear, I don't mean Wreckfest 2, which is really easy, ask me how I know, to mistype.
Firstly, kudos for use of the word bombastic.
Oh, okay, thank you. We've had inimitable as well this episode, haven't we?
We have, always.
I'll pipe down. Yeah. But this is a surprise for me because it's less than 1 year since the last game came out, and that was published by THQ Nordic. And after it came out, the developers split with that publisher and then said, we need a Patreon if we want future updates to this game because we're not going to receive any post-release revenue from the release. That's all their publisher agreement. And then all of a sudden, there's a sequel, like really soon. And we've also played it really, really early, though, aiming for next year release. Small team. Thought it was quite promising, but far from a verdict because it's too early days. But I just thought it was interesting, and maybe you agree or not, that to sort of carry on the work they wanted to do, let's say for like a No Man's Sky revival, where you do good updates and then get some more game sales, they weren't able to do that because of their publisher deal. Sometimes when games do updates like this, you're not fully sure what the economics are.
Yeah, well, releasing a game, I think is there is probably there's more opportunity for a more powerful PR campaign there, isn't there, for releasing a new game rather than updates.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah.
So yeah, they might be looking for an injection of cash by doing it this way rather than continue it. It's interesting. It sits in an interesting space in the market. Wreckreation is something that I've obviously been aware of and that we've covered on the Traxion GG website for a while now. If you had to describe it to somebody that's never seen it, played it, seen any gameplay, how would you sum it up?
So the easy answer is it's like Burnout. But the problem I've got with that comparison, even though I've just, as we record now, finished writing a video script that talks about how compared it is to Burnout. But it's kind of a lazy trope in some ways because the last Burnout game came out 20 years ago, or nearly 20 years ago, about 18 years ago, which is mental. It should blow my mind and made me feel really, really old. But it was brilliant. It's one of my favourite open-world racing games. It defied the genre. But there's a whole generation of people who have never played it. And obviously, there's been remasters and re-releases. But so what you do is it's unlicensed cars at high speed with an unrealistic but detailed damage model, and you smash into the side of another rival. And if you do that at the right timing, it's very satisfying. You take them out. Now, they respawn immediately in the race, but you're racing, but you're also trying to take out your rivals, and there's different game modes around that in an open world, and it's quite fantastical, but it's just joyous, stupid fun in vehicles.
The track builder is also an interesting element.
Oh,
I know got a lot of hype around that. It's interesting, but the comparison to Burnout is a lazy trope. Well, I'm looking at the Traxion GG Wreckreation review, which was titled "Burnout on a Budget."
Yeah, me and Martin, this is the big comparison, and the developer knows it. The developers all used to work on Burnout, right? They used to be the leads on that. So now it's an indie studio trying to recreate that, but for a new generation, I guess. But Yeah, the creation part is why it's called Wreckreation,
Mm-hmm.
and it was really advanced, but it felt superfluous. And they're going to still use that tech in the second one, but they're not showing it at the minute. They're not talking about it. They're just like, we just want to focus on the driving and the racing. Get that sorted first. So
perhaps it was
on the back
inspired by the success of Trackmania.
Yeah, there was definitely some Trackmania elements to their creation. You could create the track in real time, though, in front of your friends, which was mad. But then, do you want to do that? I'm not sure you do. So it's kind of an interesting thing. But
Sounds like an interesting opportunity for a stream, if for
yeah,
those streamers,
exactly.
perhaps.
But in the end, I don't think that focus really worked out for them. So I think they've got that technology there, but it's just really on, hey, we're going to try and do, without saying anything, Burnout game. It's actually quite good on our own. And obviously, this came a week after Criterion Games has been renamed to a Battlefield studio. All right, hey, the actual, I think that's fortuitous timing, but it might actually help them that.
Make sure you check out Tom and the team's Wreckreation 2 video, which is now available on the Traxion GG YouTube. Sorry, I just did your job there, Tom, with the seamless plug.
That's all right. Yeah, you plugged the video. You've already mentioned the newsletter. I need to mention the Discord at this point. So questions for future podcast episodes, traxion.gg/Discord to join it. Once you're in there, find the podcast section. And whatever's on your mind, like we have later on, someone asks us a question and we'll discuss it on this very podcast.
What has Traxion GG ever done for you, eh? Anyway, niche BBC World Cup reference for anybody who watched the World Cup in the UK yesterday.
No, there's a new advert, isn't there, with Ramesh Ranganathan, isn't there? And
I thought it was very good, to be honest.
Yeah, I've not actually seen it. I've just seen the BBC News headline about the story.
Yes.
About the video. All right, so back to sim racing now. Le Mans Ultimate, which isn't on consoles yet, but if you watched our recent video or read our recent article, we expect that next year. Check it out in the podcast show notes. But there's going to be a version 1.4 update for the game. The full information will be on our website by the time you're listening to this. But we know it's going to be released on 28th of July. But it also comes with the first of the US track passes. US tracks in the US track pass. Daytona and Laguna. We've already talked about that. We now have the pricing for this. And we know that some of the features will be in the update are a new protest system, further tyre model improvements because, of course, the 26 spec Cadillac and Alpine that missed the last update, and for Pro subscribers or those who subscribe to the service, extended online practice sessions. Thoughts on this, Tom?
My thoughts on this is a very clear, very loud statement of intent. We are positioning ourselves as premium esports title. It's everything about this update is to do with the more competitive of us of sim racers, the faster ones of us. The new protest system, focusing more on things like the tire model, updating the Cadillac and Alpine cars to the revised 2026 spec, which leagues and esports competitions will care about, extending online practice sessions. Every single update here is for the competitive side. So it's they're not talking about the campaign. They're not talking about anything around the edges, around the peripheries of hardcore esports racing. So it's a very targeted update, I would say.
Yeah, for the more competitive sim racer, I would say so. Also, we know that it's $20 for 2 tracks or $44 for the full 6 track pass. If you compare that to iRacing, it's great value for money. If you compare it to other sims, it's more. They have not done just track DLC, so it's perhaps unfair to compare. But I would say, for example, if you pick out one of the 2024 season individual packs, they were £10, which is about $13. This is up to $20 a pack, so a percentage jump there of significance.
Like I said,
we'll have to see.
Premium. They're going for the premium market here, aren't they?
Yeah, totally. I mean, listen, the players will vote with their wallets. And so we'll see if that works out. But anyway, we don't know the rest of the tracks, except we probably do because people have put them all on social media and stuff. But officially, it's just Laguna and Daytona for now. You can work out the rest.
All right, so since we recorded the first version of this podcast, as this podcast had to be released later than usual due to an embargo regarding MXGP, of all things, we've had time to think about and settle on the Joker element of the Le Mans Ultimate 1.4 update, because we've already discussed that in this episode, but now we have the full details. And yeah, there's 2026 spec cars, and there are longer practice sessions if you're a member, and all this cool stuff. However, if you're a subscriber to Race Control Pro or Pro Plus, you will or are set to receive a feature that is called the Joker system. This will allow you to, once every 10 races, remove any negative impact from driver rating or safety rating. So the race results or championship result stands. But if you drive like an idiot, you're going to get dinged, and you get dinged normally. Here you can sort of eradicate that. But also, I suppose, if your computer crashes or something like this, I think that maybe was the thinking, then you should be less frustrated with this. But anyway, quick thoughts, Tom.
Well, my thoughts is that it's akin to drop rounds, right? So when a lot of championships add drop rounds into their championships, let's say you have a 10-race championship, the bottom 2 results will be negated, or if you don't turn up to 2 of the races because, life, then you won't be penalized versus somebody who turns up to every race. So it's kind of it sort of irons out too much of a reward for consistency, but some elements of consistency are out of your control, whether it's because you lose connection to the race or because somebody crashes into you and it wasn't your fault. And they do, LMU 1.4 will bring in a more robust protest system. So I think that on the face of it, all of that is going in the right direction for an esports platform. However, in my mind, it categorically shouldn't be behind a paywall, because if you have 2 drivers of equal ability and each of them do 100 races, but one of them is allowed to drop the negative results of their bottom 10% of results, then they will have a higher safety rating. So just categorically, black and white, you are paying for a higher safety rating, which I think is wrong.
Yeah, I mean, this seems to be the opinion of most of the community out there that we've seen in the Traxion Discord, Traxion social media responses, and then the wider internet. Just to be clear on the drop scores analogy, obviously that's to do with championship points, and this isn't.
Yes,
but I know what you mean. We're just going to be clear.
It's a similar. Yes, you're right. It's an analogy, right? It's not a one for one. I just mean it's the similar concept of your lowest performance or 2 performances in the example I gave of drop rounds are wiped, which is nice. That's it's forgiving, and we should remember that these are games, and so an element of it being forgiving is great. But I also really sympathize with the people who are quite angry about it, and I think most of the comments that I've read about it are specifically about the paywall. There are some gripes about the actual execution, but I think the concept generally, I personally, I think it's a good idea, right? But I just, it's really hard to support it when it's behind a paywall. And to be clear, I know it affects your your driver rank and your safety rating. So it's your performance and your safety. It's your kind of online reputation, and it's about the splits that you then get put into. You are just getting a performance advantage from like a career sense when you pay, which I think feels odd.
I mean, even if you take away the paid element, we should say that Pro is $48 a year and Pro Plus is $84 a year. Also, when we reference improved protests, the subscribers get the majority of those features only as well. So there's an extra element there. But setting aside the payment, I feel like, unless there's something that's not explained yet, could you just not drive a bit stupid, crash into someone, and then use your Joker to eradicate any ding on your safety rating?
I read that opinion too, but I'm not. So my only question on that is if we pose that to LMU, would they come back and say, well, actually, with the protest system, if somebody protests it, we haven't said this yet, but we therefore wouldn't allow them to use their Joker in that incident. And if that's not the plan, it should be the plan. And I guess there's a wider question here of, it's all of a sudden quite complicated. When you go into the online arena on LMU, you've got to do some research about where you want to be. Pro plus, what the pros are, what the cons are, how the safety. Do you know what? There's a lot to it. It's not just to jump in and play, which is fine, because I think it is going for that kind of competition layer of the industry, isn't it? So yeah, it's interesting. I think by and large, I think the idea is sound. the execution and the pay will probably. Well, does it need revisiting? I mean, would they revisit? I think if this backlash is big enough, do you think it's something they'd row back on, or it's something that they've factored into their financial forecast at this point?
Well, I mean, it's not just a subscription just for this, is it? So I don't think it affects the financial forecast, but I do think that they've got just under a week before this update rolls out. And it's not that easy to change things when things are already in motion, things have already been invested. There's also the sunk cost fallacy. But there might be a possibility to at least clarify a few things before the release. And in the biggest sweeping change would be to sort of remove it or implement it as a free thing or a test bed. So there is a little bit of time here. And even if not before the release, afterwards, I'm sure they're definitely reading all this feedback. We have reached out to Motorsport Games for comment, and we'll update you on another podcast if we hear anything back. But let us know your thoughts in the comments below. For now, the whole paywall thing, I agree, Tom. It seems a bit unstable to me. Not the best route.
I was listening, Tom, to the podcast that you recorded with Motorsport Games CEO Stephen Hood this morning, and which is available on the Traxion GG Spotify. And it was interesting. I kind of figured that he'd be reading comments, Reddit, Discords, etc. But he really made a point of letting you know that he reads all of the comments. He's really in touch with the community sentiment. So none of this will pass him by. But there was also an interesting point where he said on maybe 4 or 5 occasions, we are still a business. We're a publicly traded company. We need to find ways to make money, right? And this is probably, a factor in that. He said that some of his team say all the tracks should be free. There's clearly like a tension inside the team of those who want everything to be as accessible and cheap as possible, and then Stephen, who's like, well, yes, but we also need to survive the next quarter and the quarter after that. And so, I do sympathize with him trying to find ways of making the subscription more attractive so that more people sign up to it, and therefore they can reinvest more into the game. So yeah, there's definitely 2 sides, but I guess my main point is that Stephen Hood will definitely be very much in touch with the community sentiment around this.
Quickly, before we get towards the latter stages of this podcast, 2 rapid-fire news things. I'll go with Forza first. There was 11 new cars, including the Lamborghini Temerario, and a lot of reused stuff. And even one of the all-new ones is just a Spider variant of an existing car. But hey, they're free if you want to play through the festival place. That's your bag. That's how you get them. Or if you want to pay some money, or you have one of the Ultimate Editions of this really fantastic game, the Ferrari F80 is now part of the DLC pack. And in a strange bit of news, the Hot Wheels Infinite Rush, which is the first sort of open-world racing game ever by Milestone, that's due out later this year, had a release date change forward. So it was going to be on the 24th of September. It's now the 10th. 14 days early there. That's
God, honestly, if we got a penny for every time we did a story about a release date being moved forward,
we'd have 2 pennies.
We would have possibly 2 pennies.
Yeah. But fair play, Milestone. Obviously, it's all ready to go. Well, we'll see. We'll see with the full review, which is now actually sooner than I thought. Fantastic for scheduling there. But I'm not complaining. It's not a delay. Amazing. All right. We'll dive into the community questions. Both of them are from the Discord, the aforementioned Discord this week. Frebe, apologies for the mispronunciation, if that's the case on the username there. 2 sort of questions that relate to rally games, again, going back to our lead story. Post-release for Assetto Corsa Rally, should they open source the stage scanning process or technology? And secondly, the next major development in simulator rally co-drivers, will it be implementing large language models to insert non-canned calls into the pace notes, i.e. comment on competitors' times, post-crash checks, encouragement to push, be conservative on pace. Please don't let this one devolve into an AI buzzword discussion. LLMs are debated tech, not the generalized AI conception the public has. So my interpretation of this is, should you open source the stage scanning process technology? So let's think of like Richard Burns Rally after it was released and now has lived on. And then the rally co-drivers, so he's just specifically talking about here, not the call, the pace notes, but other things to be more naturalistic. I mean, kind of agree with both, to be fair, Tom.
I agree with the second one. I think using an LLM for rally co-drivers makes all the sense in the world. I think there will be a lot of people that, because it is AI adjacent, they will just dislike it for that reason alone, which is fair enough. We can agree to disagree. But I think that's a really interesting use of LLMs in racing games. Fantastic. The first point, though, I don't know how I feel about this. Right, so for the avoidance of upsetting anyone who might say that in the future I change my mind. Right, this is I'm just thinking out loud here. Assetto Corsa Rally to me is a very deliberate, very considered, very intentional, high quality roadmap. They don't seem to be rushing. Everything seems to be high quality. Everything they've done so far, we have reviewed well. If I was them, I'd probably want to keep controlling the quality of the content on the game.
Sure.
And if you open source anything, you allow mods, etc., then all of a sudden that is thrown into question unless you then quality control everything, which then takes more time, and you might not be getting paid for it if the modder wants to put it up for free and you have to spend time quality controlling something, right? So I don't know. Maybe I'm playing devil's advocate, which I don't know upset some people, but I think I don't know. I would be nervous to do that if I was Assetto Corsa Rally.
Okay, yeah. Now you're talking there. I'm coming around a little bit to that. My opinion is thus. I think it's fine to do this once the game is dead. Like, if it's one last update for the team, everything's been shut down or they moved on to something else completely different. They send one update, like they did with GT Sport, to make it sure you could play it offline. They got one update that says, right, you can add in your own stage scanning process. That you're right, it's a curated, considered game with exacting details. So I'm sure post-release there will be more stages added, and some of those will be maybe DLC. And that, I think, is the plan anyway, to support it. I think they've said on record or in Tomcast that there'll be many more stages in development afterwards. So let's keep going with that. But on the flip side, is Assetto Corsa, that brand name, is associated with modding.
And also, we are, I say we are as if this conversation is going to actually determine the outcome of this decision. But if that were the case, we are potentially putting back the launch of a really high quality Peaks Pike on Assetto Corsa Rally, right?
Yeah, true. Yeah. We really want that. Peaks Pike, Pikes Peak in sim racing. Go watch that video on that. Well, people already have. But yeah, you're right. A lot of comments on that video were actually Assetto Corsa Rally perfect.
Really should do.
Yeah. So it's a tricky one because the brand name of that series is associated with modding. We've seen with Evo that that is now open to modding, even in early access, right? So it's kind of a confused, mixed message if you're not in the ring. But I think keep it as it is for now, because I like the quality. But maybe many years down the line, it could be opened up and keep the game going, which is as we've seen with its rival, Richard Benz Rally. Okay, this is a big one. I'm not too sure where the best people to answer this. Well, I actually speak for myself there. Tom might have the answer already locked down. But TFCN on Discord says, do you think the third video game crash has already started due to console prices and mass layoffs, which is going to be for around 3 years or so, or about to happen with the new generations of consoles? Some context there is Microsoft just laid off, Xbox within its Xbox division laid off thousands of people recently. It also sort of pushed some others out by not laying them off, but making sure this company is going to be independent and here's some money to get going, or you're going to be good to this different. We're going to try and sell some other studios. It also raised its console prices. We've had this whole Sony no physical games things in the future. We've also had the Steam releasing its first sort of, let's say, console-style PC, right? But it came in at over $1,000. So we've had the AI pushing up the price of chips. So that's not so good for the industry. And my feeling is we're sort of on a precipice at the minute. I don't think there's going to be a crash right now. It's not happening now. It's not already started. But a few more wrong moves, and don't have a weird feeling.
It's a funny time, isn't it? I think a lot of people are quite nervous about, again, not to play AI buzzword bingo, right? But I think a lot of people are quite nervous about the impact of AI. And if you're putting together a new project, you're probably thinking, well, do I invest in or buy an existing game studio that's got 100, 150 people when the future of game development could be small skunkwork teams of 10 to 15 people using AI to create the same quality? Now, obviously, there'll be a lot of people saying that that's absolutely impossible. And right now it absolutely is, but there is a thing called the future where that might be possible. And so I think that it's the uncertainty, you know, in markets generally, when it comes to investment, the worst factor you can throw into the pot is uncertainty, because then people are thinking, well, I'll just wait. And I don't think it's just gaming that's experiencing that, but I do think gaming is rife for a bit of a shake-up when it comes to AI implementation, and therefore a restructuring generally of the game industry, which, whilst it hasn't happened yet, because it might, that's enough, I think, to make people nervous and stop dipping into their wallet to invest in this sort of stuff. But ultimately, that is all conjecture, and I don't know.
Yeah, well, no. We neither of us know. I guess, yeah, what you make there is interesting. That is a strange time for gaming. But for me, it's the main thing is just the rising costs of certain things at the minute, especially the hardware, which doesn't help people get in. You know, I was thinking, you've got Grand Theft Auto coming this year, right? Amazing. There's going to be, and it's only on console. There's going to be a load of Xbox and PlayStation sold. But hang on a minute. How much is a PlayStation 5 Pro now? Like, it's astronomical. So, and above, in my opinion, without doing research, I think the prices of hardware, so that's PC hardware or consoles, so it's not just console equipment that's gone up, just to be clear. I mean, even Apple raised it, with the biggest margins in the world, raised its prices recently. The chip increases is the biggest thing, I think. And then we've also had companies like Microsoft making these random acquisitions, or not random, but big acquisitions that haven't quite worked out. And then also, if you want a big budget game, it can often take longer and be more resource intensive than ever. And that's a huge expense. Having said all of that, I did see James Bond first, like, cost an absolute fortune to make, but has made it all back, or made a lot of it back already. And that proves that if you make something good, people will buy. So let's hope it's positive in the future.
Yeah, I think it's probably, if you're a breakout hit, you're a breakout hit, right? It's just the days where you can make a decent game and get by feels like that's harder, right? If you've got
the middle ground,
it's the middle ground, right? If you're a tiny solo developer, well, then that's great because you've got zero costs, right? If it's a side project that happens to take off, if you happen to be sat on some sort of incredibly valuable licensed IP, then also great. It's the middle that I think is struggling.
That's very, very true. Yep. So we'll see how it goes, but I hope it's not a crash. TFC. All right. Just to end, we've got a couple of comments, feedback from last week's episode. We discussed rising iRacing subscription costs, and we should cover Pedro Ramos's opinion. Paying monthly plus content is not really acceptable, either one or the other. The fact we accept it is also not okay. And then we've got the Southeast Rail with the trainers there thumbnail. In reference to IndyCar docuseries, I said, there was one, but it's behind Power Plus, which is the case. But apparently they have another one, of a newer docuseries to their YouTube channel called All In. It's been done throughout the 2020 season actively, and I've posted soon after race weekends the episode is about. Or which someone called T.S. Bunner, I don't know who he is, said, thank you, we'll take a look at that.
Well, do you know what? I didn't write this in the comment, but I should have done. I was lucky enough to go to South by Southwest. I can't remember if it was last year or the year before. And I was on a panel with, I went to a panel. I wasn't on a panel. I went to a panel with Beth Peretta, Alex Palou, and Bruno Senna, who were talking about the All In series that they were making. And I remember thinking, I should really watch that. Totally forgot it existed until Southeast Rail said, you should watch this thing called All In. I was like, yes. Definitely should have. Right. So, yes, I will. It's on my list. Thank you.
And then to finish off, AV Flashback 8913. Of course, if gamers want to play an updated version of the old Tucker Race Driver, this was following email correspondence that Tom received. I would suggest playing Grid Autosport. That game is really good, but it was criminally underrated at the time of release. I think it's because it was a really late release on the 7th gen consoles, 360 PS3. People are already looking forward to 8th generation. Yeah, I agree. I think the problem with it is it's very hard, still hard. Yeah, it's still locked on those consoles, right? So unless you sort of, I don't know if you can still buy it on PC. So maybe correct me on that. You might have to go down the emulation route, which is legally questionable. There was a version on Switch. Yeah, I agree. That's a really good game, but it's also still quite old as well, right? So present and Grid Legends had elements of that with the story. You may throw the story in the bin. But if you want the Grid Autosport vibe-ish, that was a more recent game that's still readily available, but still not quite the magic, I don't think.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the grid games. I used to, back in my former life in the Navy, when I was trying to game offline, grid was one of the few games that you could get a pretty good experience. If I needed 10 or 15 minutes between watches or tasks on the ship, I could go and play grid. And I remember it feeling that it handled incredibly well. So it's a good shout, actually. I haven't thought of those games really for a long time, but I don't know. A properly licensed new TOCA game, maybe that's us in our little bubble thinking that would do well, but
no, I think it would.
It probably fits securely in that category of the struggling middle ground that we were just discussing.
It does, actually. Yeah, and that's probably why it doesn't exist. And on that crushing disappointment, we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening. Bye.